morning, brothers and sisters.
Good morning.
Umoja Tutashinda.
Umoja. Ujima. Uhuru.
Welcome to the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church, Black Theology and Bible class.
All right.
Will everyone please stand? All right. Will everyone please stand for the reciting of the Black Christian Nationalist Creed? It can be found on the Black African books.
I believe that human society stands under the judgment of one God, revealed to all, and known by many names. His creative power is visible in the mysteries of the universe and the revolutionary Holy Spirit, which will not long permit men to endure injustice, nor to wear the shackles of bondage, in the rage of the powerless when they struggle to be free, and in the violence and conflict which even now threatens to level the hills and mountains. I believe that Jesus, the Black Messiah, was a revolutionary leader sent by God to rebuild the Black nation Israel and to liberate Black people from powerlessness and from the oppression, brutality, and exploitation of the white Gentile world. I believe that the revolutionary spirit of God embodied in the Black Messiah is born anew in each generation, and that Black Christian nationalists constitutes a living remnant of God's chosen people in this day, and are charged by Him with responsibility for the liberation of Black people. I believe that both my survival and my salvation depend upon my willingness to reject individualism, and so I commit my life to the liberation struggle of Black people and accept the values, ethics, morals, and program of the Black nation, defined by that struggle and taught by the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church.
Extend your hands for prayer invocation. Almighty God of the Black nation, we thank you for allowing us to be present in this Black Theology and Bible class. We pray that we are open vessels so that we can receive the message. Pray these and all blessings in the name of the revolutionary Black Messiah, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Brothers and sisters, we want to welcome Sister Shakesha this morning.
All
She's
right.
going to be speaking to us on the Book of Ruth.
All right.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay, this morning we're going to be dealing with the Book of Ruth. We're going to be dealing with a book about a sister.
All right.
You know, the Bible is filled with books about brothers and men. But today we're going to talk about two sisters that played a very important part in the biblical days. And it also gives us a chance to realize that sisters played a part back in the day, and we play a very important part today.
Well, all right.
The Book of Ruth is one of the few books named after women in the Bible. In the traditional Bible, there are two books. You have Ruth and Esther. And in the Bible that we're familiar with, the Jerusalem Bible, and other Bibles containing the Apocrypha, Ruth is one of three books that would add Judith.
Amen.
Okay, now the book only has 4 chapters.
Okay.
And it takes its name from a Gentile woman from the land of Moab, who is one of the main characters, if not the main character of the book. Although the book is short, very, very short, this remarkable book contains many lessons that will impact the lives of us here at the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church.
All right.
Okay, now, as I was reading on Ruth, I read about a lot of controversy, a lot of contrast, different messages that people were trying to get across and what everybody got out of it. And the only thing that I can preach about or teach about is what I got out of it.
Well.
Okay? And there should be no controversy about this.
All right.
The Book of Ruth is an excellent illustration of unconditional commitment, unconditional loyalty, and unconditional faithfulness.
Well.
Now today we're going to talk about 2 remarkable sisters, Naomi and Ruth.
All right.
Some say Naomi was the main character. Some say Ruth was the main character. I say they are both main characters because they both had an impact and they both helped fulfill the mission that God had in store for them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's take a look at some background on the book of Ruth. Can I get someone to just read for me that famous verse from Judges, chapter 21, verse 25? We're going to talk about that a little bit.
There was no king in Israel, so every man did what was right in his own mind.
In his own eyes.
I'm
So
all right.
what does that mean to anybody here? If they were doing whatever they wanted to do and there was no king, that meant they probably wasn't thinking a whole lot about God at that time, right? There was a lot of sinning going on.
Individualism on the rampage.
Right, yes, lots of stuff, okay. So they had disregard for the laws, everybody, man was out for themselves, so this probably really angered God. So the nation of Israel at that time was in the midst of a famine. Ruth took place during when the judges was ruling Israel. And that was a period where there was lots of immorality, idolatry, they had war. So there was just a lot of things going on and no one was really paying attention to God. The nation Israel was in the midst of a famine. Throughout the Bible, famines usually indicate that the nation Israel is being tested. Now we want to set the background for Ruth, and I would like to get someone to read for me Ruth chapter 1. We're going to do verse 1 through 5. We're going to combine these two together. Ruth chapter 1, verse 1 through 5.
Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons Mahlon and Chilion, Euphrates of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Ophrah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And the women were left to her 2 sons and her husband.
Okay, so here it is kind of how Naomi and her husband and her 2 sons ended up in Moab. They were fleeing the famine. And we all know how that can be, especially as mothers. Our main purpose is to make sure that we take care of our family. So when one thing doesn't work, then we find other resources and we move on. So anyway, they moved to Moab, but tragedy struck the family. Elimelech, he died, and he left Naomi as a widow with just 2 sons. Now, I guess her sons eventually grow up and they marry Moabite women, and they lived in Moab for about 10 years. But then something else happens. Another tragedy strikes. She loses both her sons. Now, as I was reading, I was looking up the names. They had the meanings of the names of the people in the Bible. And Mahlon meant that sickly. Chilion meant wasting away.
Well.
So just in the African community, we know that we give names based on meanings.
Right.
So just based on these meanings, it would seem like they was having a very difficult time in Bethlehem. The children probably were sickly from the beginning, from starvation, not getting food, because famine does, you're not able to get hold to a lot of food. So anyway, tragedy struck again. The tragic events that happened to Naomi, it was enough to shake anyone's faith, but Naomi remained faithful. It was the faith of Naomi that influenced Ruth. And if we'll remember, Ruth was one of her daughter-in-laws. We're going to talk about Naomi going back to Bethlehem. She set out with her 2 daughter-in-laws to return to Bethlehem, and then as they were on the road, Naomi thought about something, and she told both Orpah and Ruth to go back. Now, just this conversation between Naomi and her two daughter-in-laws. It takes place in Ruth chapter 1, verses 11 through 14. Can I get someone to read that for me, please?
But they wept aloud and said to her, No, we will go back with you to your people. And Naomi said, You must return, my daughters. Why come with me? Have I any more sons in my womb to make husbands for you? Return, my daughters, and go, for I am too old now to marry again. Even if I said there is still hope for me, even if I were to have a husband, bear a night and bear sons, would you be prepared to wait until they were grown up? Would you refuse to marry for this? No, my daughters, I should then be deeply grieved for you, for the hand of Yahweh has been raised against me. And once more they started to weep aloud. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law and went back to her people, but Ruth clung to her.
Okay. So pretty much, they wanted to go back with her, but she didn't want them to go back. And you know, Ruth's husband had died, her sons had died, like pretty much all the males of her family had died. So she's going through a pretty trying time. But throughout it all, Naomi was still able to maintain herself. She was able to maintain her faith, and she was able to maintain her commitment to God. Now, she had heard that the famine was over in Bethlehem, and she decided to return there with her family. She realized that the predicament that she was in as a single black woman in a foreign land, you know, pretty much it was very dangerous. So she knew her best bet was to go back home and be with her people and live in the land of her God. So that's what she decided to do. So she and her daughter-in-laws, they set about going to Bethlehem. So I guess Naomi thought about it again, and she told them to return. And with that, she kissed them, and she bestowed the blessings of Yahweh on them. Now, what I want someone to do is read from the outline, Deuteronomy 23, the 23rd chapter, the 3rd through the 7th verse. And you'll find it in...
No Ammonite or Moabite may ever come into the assembly of the Lord, nor may any of their descendants, even to the 10th generation, come into the assembly of the Lord, because they would not come to meet you with food and water or your journey after you left Egypt. And because they hired Balaam, son of Beor, from Pethor in Aram, the Haram, to curse you. The Lord your God will not listen to Balaam, but turned his curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loves you.
All right.
Okay. All right, and so just reading that, that is one of the laws from the book of Deuteronomy. Okay, and after we read that, I mean, I want everybody to think, why do you think Naomi was so insistent on her daughter-in-laws returning back home? I mean, just off the top of your head, why do you think? I mean, was she thinking about herself? Was she thinking about their welfare? I mean, what do you think her reasoning could have been, the reason she told them to go back? Because here it was, two women wanted to follow Naomi all the way back to her land, but she tells them to go back home to her mothers, to their mothers. Why would that be?
It could have been twofold. It could have been, obviously, they were not, this was in Deuteronomy, and they were going to be considered what we might call the slave culture coming into the generation, coming into Israel, that they would be shunned, they would be restricted to somebody. I mean, they would be looked at as second-class citizen. Outside. And it might also fall on her as well. Like, why would you bring a Moabite into the presence of God?
Right.
So it could have been her as well. So, I don't know, I can do a second guess.
Well, yeah, and all of that is correct. I mean, because basically, I think, I'm sorry.
I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, because pretty much when they went back, they were going to be outcasts. So because they had built a relationship together, they had lived there together for 10 years, you know, as mother-in-law and daughters-in-law, they had established a relationship. So pretty much I feel like she was looking out for them to make sure that she didn't take them into a dangerous situation. Okay? Now at first, Orpah and Ruth wanted to go back with Naomi. Now Naomi probably told them what it was going to be like in Bethlehem. When they go back, she's going to tell them what they'd be up against, you know, if they followed her back to Bethlehem. So Orpah turned around and went back home. The Bible doesn't say why Orpah turned around, but Orpah must have thought about it again, because she definitely turned around and went back home. Okay, now, Orpah probably thought about just how much she would have to sacrifice if she went to Bethlehem. She thought about the things that she was going to have to give up. And she said, I'm sorry, Naomi, I love you, but I don't know if I'm willing to make all those sacrifices. So she turned around. She said, I might not be able to get me no man when I go to Bethlehem. I might not have no car, you know what I'm saying? I might have to go to church on Sunday. I might have to pay some tithes, you know. I might have to do all these things, and I don't know if I'm ready to do that. So I'm going to turn around and I'm going back home. Okay? But through all of that, Ruth still wanted to go. Okay? Now, why would Ruth want to follow Naomi, knowing that the times was going to be trying and that it was going to be difficult? Have any of you all ever committed to something and you knew it was going to be hard, you knew it was going to take a long time, you knew it was going to work you to death, but you decided to do it anyway? Anybody ever had that situation?
No.
Okay. Even though Naomi was in the worst situation a woman could be in at that time, even though she was in the midst of a lot of uncertainty, Naomi maintained her faith. It was the faith of Naomi that has the greatest influence on Ruth. Although Naomi was living in the land of Moab, Yahweh was still her God. It must have been something about the way Naomi interpreted her God to Ruth that made Ruth want to abandon her own people. You know, she had respect for Naomi. She trusted Naomi. She trusted the decisions of Naomi, and she held Naomi in high regard. So through all, Naomi remained faithful, and because of her faith and her belief, Ruth took the courage to step out on faith. Ruth took what we call a leap of faith. Not knowing what was in front of her, but just knowing it was well worth the effort. Okay? All right. Ruth declares her loyalty and commitment to Naomi. Ruth was willing to give up her God and leave her family behind. Can I get someone to read Ruth chapter 1, 15 through 18 verse?
So she said, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, do not press me to leave you or turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well. Even death parts me from you. When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. All right.
Amen. Amen. Now, that's what you call commitment. Say it again, sister. Commitment. That's right. Loyalty. Ruth was committed to what Naomi had evidence. She must have been CORing or having worship service, Bible class or something, because Ruth was willing to give up everything to go follow Naomi. And that's definitely commitment. Now, Naomi was connected to Ruth on a greater level than just Ruth being her daughter-in-law. She was connected to Ruth through her faith. That was faith in the God of Israel. Now Naomi returns back to the land of Judah, back to her people, and with her is Ruth. Now Naomi felt that that God had punished her for leaving the group. Now, mind you, she still had her faith, but she had left the covenant protection that God had promised to the people.
Well,
So they left, and she felt that God was punishing her for that. So in Ruth, first chapter, the 20th verse, Naomi says, but she said to them, do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, which means bitter. For Shaddai has marred me bitterly.
well,
Filled full I departed, Yahweh brings me back empty. Why call me Naomi then, since Yahweh has given witness against me, and Shaddai has afflicted me? Now, do you think Yahweh punished Naomi? Or do you think Naomi turned away from God?
well,
Naomi turned away from God, right? Because when we leave the group, things happen to us.
That's
You know,
right.
and oh, Lord, I can testify. Because, we leave, we go to dark places, and I'm telling you now, we would not return had not we had the BCN right here in our heart.
Well,
So we all stray away sometimes. And it's our faith and our commitment that brings us back.
Well.
Hallelujah. Amen. But see, the thing about it is, Naomi did not know. She came back feeling all down. Because, that's when we come back to God. That's when God can use us the most. When we feel at our lowest and we feel like we don't have anywhere else to go, we don't have anything else to lose, that's when God can use us.
Well.
So she came back empty. She came back depressed and all of that. But little did Naomi know that her and Ruth was part of a plan. I mean, this is God's plan. And they don't know. And this just goes to show that God can use anybody. You never know. It could be the person sitting next to you. It could be the person sitting behind you. So God can use any of us.
that's right.
Okay. Okay.
Amen.
God's plan in action. God rewards Ruth's loyalty and commitment. And with that, I would like to get someone to read Ruth chapter 2, verse 11 through 12. Ruth is a short book.
How have I so earned your favor that you take notice of me, even though I am a foreigner? As Boaz answered her, I have been told all you have done for your mother-in-law since your husband's death, and how you left your own father and mother in the land where you were born, to come among a people whom you knew nothing about, before you came here. May Yahweh reward you for what you have done. May rich recompenses be made to you by Yahweh, the God of Israel, whom you have come to find shelter beneath his wings.
Amen. Okay, so pretty much what that is saying is, okay, Ruth had made a commitment to serve Yahweh. And because of that commitment and the loyalty that was shown by Ruth, Yahweh showed Ruth favor. He allowed her to be accepted into the community of the nation, as well as marry Boaz, which we'll talk about later, who was one of Naomi's kinsmen. And during that time, it was very, very dangerous for women to be unmarried. Being molested was always a risk. And pretty much by you being a foreigner, Moabite, in the land of Israel, and you're single, there was the possibilities of all things happening. So God had her in his hand. And everything that she did was part of his plan. Naomi's family is redeemed. Can I get someone to read for me Ruth chapter 4, 9 through 10?
Then Boaz said to elders and all the people, you are witness this day that I made from Naomi all that belongs to Elimelech, to Chilion, and to Mahlon. You are witness to Mahlon. You are witness to, and I buy Ruth the Moabites, Mahlon's widow, to be my wife, to keep the name of the dead man in his inheritance, so that the dead man's name may not die out among his brothers, and at the gate of his town.
Okay. All right, well, let's talk about what's happening here. Now, back in, he is proclaiming to the elders that he's pretty much redeeming Naomi's family. And what happened was, like back in Leviticus, I think it was Leviticus chapter 25, verse 25, pretty much one of the laws was that if your brother falls, you know, to evil doings or something like that, and they have to sell the property, then the brother will come and redeem that property so that it stays within the nation. Because God's law was that you're not, this is the promised land, so really no one was supposed to be selling property. So pretty much they made the law where someone could come and redeem the property if it was getting sold. And also in Deuteronomy, there was another thing that he was doing when he was proclaiming to the elders. He was pretty much making sure that Elimelech's name remained on the books of Israel, because that was also a law. You know, if there was not a child born, then your brother or your next kinsman could redeem you, and the first child that's born, then they would take on the name of the dead man. So pretty much here, we have a situation where two people started out hopeless, and then their situation changes. Once Naomi realized that salvation is a group experience, then her situation went from being one of hopelessness to one of hope.
Well,
Her dead husband's name would be carried on, and they would continue to keep the land.
well, all right.
Now, pretty much, we can say these are characteristics that all of us need to have as Black Christian nationalists if we want to be effective in the struggle for Black liberation.
Well,
Now, can I get someone to read for me BCN Teaches number 3?
Even within the framework of a correct analysis, philosophy, and program projection, it is impossible to build an effective organization without loyalty, discipline, and a clearly defined chain of command.
Amen. We could read that 2 or 3 times. But it has been proven time and time again that the greatest downfall of an organization is lack of discipline, lack of loyalty, and disrespect for leadership. Here in the church, we function in groups. Every group has their norms and their standards to which they want to hold their members accountable. Each member is expected to uphold these norms and these standards.
that's right.
So when you have members who are not willing to accept the standards, then to me, that is working against the group.
That's right.
We
My Lord.
cannot do anything without some kind of guidelines that we need to go by. We need members who are willing to follow the guidelines. We have to focus on the group and not those individuals that's not willing to work for the greater good of the community. Amen. Can we get someone to read BCN Teaches number 10? All right. We're going to take this thing on a little bit further.
All right.
God has historically chosen to work through groups and nations rather than through individuals.
Well,
As shown in the Bible, the God of the Black nation works through the power of the group experience to transform individuals and bring into being a communal Black nation.
Okay, as a Black Christian nationalist, what does that mean to you? Anybody in here, what does that mean to you?
That means God is first.
God is first. Amen. God is first. And God works through groups.
well,
And He usually touches the lives of individuals, but they are working for the greater good of the group.
Well.
So if we have people that's in our midst here, and they're not about living communal, they're not about doing God's will here, and we're getting all of this flack, and, you know, we got a nation to build here.
Well.
So it's time out. We got to stop allowing all of this stuff to happen, and we need to start holding members accountable for doing God's will here today.
my Lord.
Amen.
My Lord.
Okay, all right. Black Christian nationalism calls Black people to total commitment to the Black liberation.
Well,
It requires the submergence of individualism in the Black nation and the acceptance of discipline of that movement.
well,
We do not demand commitment to your program of Black liberation or to your philosophy of Black liberation or to your theology of Black liberation. or to your sociology of black liberation, but the black Christian nationalist theology, ideology, program, and leadership.
Well, all right, sister.
Is the answer,
Well,
okay?
well,
Our founder and Holy Patriarch Jeramogi Abebe Ajiman, he stepped out on faith.
Well.
He took a giant leap of faith when he realized that the black church was not relevant to the needs of black people.
Well,
and
that's
he
right.
decided to give us a black theology that was relevant.
That's
It
right.
was the faith and commitment of Jeramogi that inspired thousands of people. And we followed him based on his vision.
Right.
Well.
Can you see the similarity between that and Ruth? Ruth followed Naomi. We followed Jeramogi because
Yes,
we knew
we
he
did.
had a God-given mission.
well,
Take it on home.
Okay, all right. I just want everybody to know that during this is our anniversary month. We're here 63 years because Jeramogi stepped out on
That's
faith.
right.
And we followed him. And to this day, we're still here. And it is our responsibility to make sure that we continue 63 years more. And with that, I conclude my lesson on the Book of Ruth.
Great job, sister.
amen,
We
amen.
want to thank Sister Acacia for a powerful,
Yes. Great
talking
job.
about BCN,
All
Black
right.
Christian Nationalists, commitment,
BCN.
That's right.
group process.
BCN.
Still good answer.
Will everyone please stand for a prayer of benediction? Almighty God of Black Nation, thank you so much for this powerful message. We pray that it heals us and gives us a vision of what we need to do to continue the vision of Jeramogi Abebe Ajiman. We pray these blessings and all in the name of the revolutionary Black Messiah Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Please join us downstairs for church service. And next Sunday, Reverend Dwayne will be teaching us